everyone, and a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today for 37th episode of Excellencia Series. Today's topic is Thrive at Work, building a well-being-driven organization. We are delighted to have such a diverse group with us, both from within JHS and from our wider partner group. At JHS, we strongly believe that when well-being is embedded into the way we work, it enables stronger teams, resilient leadership, and a sustainable outcome for everyone we work with. Employee experience and well-being are critical how organizations grow, perform, and lead in today's environment. Today's session will share practical insight and expert perspective that are relevant across teams, roles, and all the organizations. We hope the discussion sparks ideas can reflect on and apply within your workplace as well. But before we begin, the session will, just a quick housekeeping note. The session will run for approximately an hour. The 45 minutes will be the speaker will be talking, and then towards the end, we'll open the session for question and answer. With that, I would like to hand over the mic to Ms. Sejal to take us forward. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Deepika, and really a pleasure to see that there is so many people that are interested in this topic. I think this is a topic that is very, very close to my heart because I have a very different take on employee engagement and employee engagement, and I wanted to share something here. So let me share my slides and then we can start. Let me know if all of you can see this.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. So, I think for me, employee engagement is not really an HR initiative. It's actually more about what each and every leader, each and every person in the organization really enables people within the organization to do. And it's really about how work feels for every single person in the organization. And that's really truly employee engagement, because employee engagement is not something that can be driven by HR alone. It is something that is really driven by every single leader, right from the CEO down to the line manager that you report to. And so for me, employee engagement goes beyond engagement, and it's really about designing for the human experience. And this is something that has been something that I have actually learned over my 25 years of experience. In fact, one of the roles that I played was that of head of employee experience at Hindustan Unilever for South Asia. And what I realized at that time was that, really what people want is that in moments that matter, they truly believe that the organization cares about them and the organization is able to help them to achieve their goals and their aspirations. And truly, that is what drives employee engagement for me. Right. So I think that's extremely important. So, like I said, I think for me, employee experience is truly what an employee feels and not what HR launches. You might launch many programs that are linked to employee experience or that you think will drive employee experience, but they don't truly drive employee experience. In fact, for me, EX or employee experience is not about engagement surveys, wellness days, or even like, the events that you have during festivals, etc. Those, of course, matter, and they play a part in making people feel a part of an organization and makes everybody feel like they're part of a united organization. But it is not what drives true employee engagement. And I really love this image that I have on the right hand side, right? Because the reality is that an employee who leaves for salary may return for the culture, but one who leaves because of the culture will never return, even if they get a higher salary in that same organization. And that actually summarizes for for me what employee experience truly is, right? Because it is about a place that makes you feel like home. It is a place that makes you feel that you are valued. It is a place that makes you feel that you will be respected and will give you a chance to grow and allow you to fulfill your aspirations. So EX is really not about engagement surveys and wellness days. It is really about how easy is it to get work done in the organization that you work for, right? How safe is it that you feel to speak up? Do you feel comfortable to really say what's on your mind, even if it's a difficult thing to say? I think that is extremely important. And this is what we call psychological safety. So how safe do you feel to speak up? And last is, how fairly are people treated? Do you feel that even though people often say in an organization that this is a very the organization really is built on meritocracy, is it truly how you feel when you are rewarded? Is it truly how you feel when you're recognized for the work that you do? So how fairly are people treated? So for me, this is what employee experience truly is. And this picture on the right-hand side really summarizes what employee experience for me really is. I'm unable to go to the next slide. Yeah. Okay. So what it actually drives engagement, so we talked about what employee experience isn't, and we talked about the fact that there are three things that really drive employee engagement. But what is it, if you were to deep dive into it, what does engagement really involve, right? So I think there are four big things that I think are very, very important. I think the first thing is meaningful work. I think and I'll give you an example that I have myself had, right? I've worked with very large multinational organizations for majority of my career. And of course, in each organization, you learn something very different. You learn about, sometimes it is learning about an industry, sometimes it is learning about how to kind of think about project management, sometimes it is you learn about just navigating through an organization that is highly matrixed, highly complex, and is a international organization. So really learning how to navigate through all of those relationships and being able to influence without authority. That's actually really the kind of lessons that you learn, right? But the meaningful work for me, and for each person, I think meaningful work means something very different. And if you really ask me, today's Gen Z, for them, meaningful work is actually a very big part of having them want to be part of an organization. If you ask any Gen Z, what are the 2-3 things that they look out for when they look out for an organization that they want to join and work for an extended period of time, they'll always talk about purpose, right? And so if work that helps you to fulfill your purpose is usually something that makes you feel like it's meaningful work. So I think that is extremely important in an organization that allows you to truly create impact. It will make you feel like you're doing meaningful work. I think that's extremely important. I think the second thing is about growth. Now, growth for me is not just about promotions. And this is something that I always talk about in every organization that I've worked for, because I think growth can also be lateral. Growth is also about, like I was talking about, every organization teaches you something new. And as an individual, as a professional, growth can come from just learning how to better yourself. Growth can come from being part of different teams, and growth can come from being part of different functions and partnering different functions. So for me, growth is really about, are you able to learn something new every day? That's really growth for me. And I think that really drives engagement. And I think that those people that always think about growth or equate growth to promotions will always feel like an organization will not be able to sustain them, or will not be something that they will want to be part of for a very long time. Because promotions become very dependent on the organization context, what are the available roles at the next level, and as you grow within an organization, promotions become much harder because the number of roles at the top level reduce. So if the mindset is always about growth being being equated to promotion, then satisfaction will be much harder to, feel at work. So I think that's extremely important when you think about growth, to think about it as both lateral growth as well as vertical growth. And growth can be just about learning and developing yourself, and growth can be about how you grow as an individual, and growth can be about how you grow, into a leader. So it can be many things, and I think so that's really, really important. And it's also about a mindset shift, because I can definitely see this as we are seeing now different generations working together in the workforce. Very often you'll find that the mindset about growth is very, very different. And so as a leader, when you're working with Gen Z, being able to convince them that growth goes beyond promotion will only come if there is trust. And so I think, building that trust with your team, with the people that you work with, becomes very important as a leader. And giving them autonomy and giving them the feeling that they have a sense of ownership in the organization plays a very big part in them feeling like they are truly engaged, that they are part of the organization, that they have a say in the organization, that they can create true impact in the organization. So that autonomy and trust, really help to build that engagement, and also help you to convince the team that growth doesn't come just from vertical growth or promotions. And last but not the least, I think for me, this is extremely important, because at the end of the day, as you work in larger organizations, the person or the people that you work with the most happens to be the line manager. And the line manager is somebody who can make or break the company for you. You might have an unbelievable CEO at the top, and there might be a culture that the CEO wants to drive in the organization. But the feeling that remains with you is really the feeling that is created by the line manager that you work with closely, right? And hence the manager quality and building manager quality is extremely critical in driving engagement. So for me, these are the four big things that I think today, given the kind of generational workforce, the different generations in the workforce that we have, these are the four things that will truly create, a highly engaged organization and a set of people who will want to work for the organization for longer. And, in fact, an interesting story for me to share is that when I joined HUL, Hindustan Unilever, I was always told that this is an organization that, has people that have been with the organization for more than 2 decades, sometimes, even 3 decades. And the average tenure of people in Hindustan Unilever was about 15 years, etc. And so what I really felt there was that the culture was already built, right? And so very often what I felt was that if you joined the organization at a senior level, when people had already been in the organization for 15, 16 years, it became much harder to integrate. And that made it much harder to feel truly engaged. That was one part of it. The second was that when I joined HUL, it was close to when COVID actually happened. And what I realized then was that COVID actually made it very difficult for them to sustain the kind of culture that they were very used to, which was a culture that was very much built with people being in the office, having water cooler conversations, and a lot of the influencing happened through very informal connects and informal networks in the organization. But because of COVID, they had to shift, and this is true of all organizations during COVID, but there was a big shift from a very in-office, water cooler, and informal network culture to a hybrid culture, which made it very, very difficult for people that joined joined after COVID to truly settle into the organization. So what happened after the 2 years of COVID was that there was a big shift in how people started thinking and interacting with each other. And not only that, what we realized was that post that, the average tenure of people that joined just before COVID or around COVID did not extend beyond 2 to 3 years. So it was very interesting because, it makes you realize how important the culture of a place is in establishing what sort of engagement model really works. And hence, if I were to really think about it, if you have these four things, then regardless of what else you have from a culture perspective, you can still continue to drive that engagement. So I think this is really, really important. And I think every story, is different, and every experience that you might have in different organizations is, kind of can teach you something totally new about engagement and about culture. But I think these are my lessons from, having worked with large, complex multinationals. So if I had to kind of continue on that same path, in terms of understanding what is it that high retention organizations or highly engaged organizations do differently, I think, again, four things that I think are very, very important. I think one is they design roles around outcomes and not activities. This is actually very, very important. And again, this goes back to my point around purpose, right? And especially now as we see more and more Gen Z joining the workforce, where purpose becomes very, very important for them. They are looking at an outcome-driven, role. They are not looking at saying, please finish this job or this task or this activity. That the fulfillment does not come from that, and hence the roles cannot be about, who's going to finish this activity, and is it a very monotonous and repetitive activity, but it is more about outcomes. And I think the more and more roles are designed around outcomes, the more you'll see people being engaged. I think the second big thing that highly engaged organizations or high retention organizations do is that they invest deeply in manager capability. As I mentioned, for me, the most important thing that drives engagement is the manager quality. And very often you'll find that manager quality can be built. It is about building the capability of the manager to be able to lead teams. And so having programs that help with line manager capability building programs, or even in terms of creating environments that allow for more informal connects with a manager, become very, very important. So one of the things I loved about my time, for example, at HUL was that there was a lot of informal networks, as I told you. And so being able to kind of connect informally with even leaders was extremely important. And so you would see a lot of opportunities for one-on-one engagement, a lot of opportunities for small team connects with the line manager. There were very regular connects with the line manager. So I think all of this played a very big part in helping the line managers to understand what the needs of the team were. And it also helped to build the manager capability in understanding that different team members have different skill sets, and how do you leverage those different skill sets effectively. So I think investing deeply in manager capability would really help not only in driving engagement, but would also enable better productivity in the organization, because then you're able to understand how to better utilize the different skill sets within a team. I think the third big thing is, how do you make internal mobility visible and real? One of the things that at Akasa Air we do a really good job of, and I've seen this in other organizations as well, is that we have something called internal job postings. Now, these internal job postings play a very big part in helping people feel like they have clarity and visibility that is very transparent, in helping them understand what is available in the organization from a role perspective, and allows them them to then very carefully craft a career within the organization. And you'll find this in most large organizations, right, where there are multiple roles, multiple functions. How do you kind of make internal mobility beyond just the immediate role that you're playing and growth within that role? How do you make that possible, right? Because, for example, if I look at aviation, I can see people from, our ground operations moving into security operations. I can see our ground operations teams actually moving into cabin crew roles, because it's all about customer service at the end of the day. So if you have that internal mobility visible and it's real and transparent, people truly feel like this organization is looking to build a career, helping you build a career. And you'll see a lot many more people feel like wanting to stay within the organization. So I think that's another very important thing in terms of what high retention organizations do differently. And then the last thing, which I think is so important and actually is becoming even more important as we're seeing AI coming into play in a very big way in organizations, is how do you reduce process friction that drains energy, right? Because very often, if you find that you're not being productive, or that you're finding that you're doing very repetitive work, it becomes extremely boring. And when it becomes boring, you don't want to do that work properly. And so, as much as possible, if the organization is willing to invest in helping you drive greater productivity, better processes, use of technology, this would help to reduce that process friction. And it helps to increase the energy in the team, and will, of course, drive greater productivity within the organization. And that's the whole point, right? This is a symbiotic relationship between employees and an organization. And that symbiotic relationship can only work if the organization realizes what is necessary for the employee, and the employee actually takes what is provided to them and looks at it with the right mindset. So it's a two-way street here. And I think the more and more, organizations begin to communicate better about what is it that they are able to provide to their employees, they will find that these are the people that will stay with them longer. And I think communication plays a very big part in enabling this as well. So, I find many organizations, including Akasa Air, HUL, Accenture, all of them had fabulous portals, employee portals, which were so fabulous that they allowed for a lot of engagement, a lot of information and transparency around what is the business outcome that the company is driving, what are the key metrics that the company is driving, how are we performing against these metrics, what are some of the big events that we have had, what are our leaders thinking, have they been speaking at different events, and what's the message that they're landing about the organization and about their values and the kind of values they want to build in the organization. So I think all of this plays a very big part in creating that symbiotic relationship that really builds high retention and high engagement organizations. So I think this is extremely important. I just wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit and go from engagement to wellness. Right. One of the things that we often hear, especially from the young talent, right, is work-life balance, or very commonly now called work-life integration. And this is something that, again, I often, laugh about, because I keep hearing this word that, I don't have enough work-life balance. I, struggle because I'm not able to find time to do this and that, and, all of that. And I'm actually a mother of two. I have a daughter who's 15 and a son who's 12. And when I think about it, and when you have a career that is a long-standing career, there's never going to be a period, honestly, where you feel like it has been perfect on both counts. There's always a day when one part of life and is not as good as the work, or work isn't as good as life. So that's why I always call it work-life integration and not work-life balance, because there is nothing like balance. And so, that's an extremely important message to keep landing when I speak to a lot of young talent, because again, I see a lot of the young talent talking about focusing on growth, talking about how quickly they can move forward, how quickly they can achieve their goals. And then in the same breath, they talk about work-life balance, and they talk about saying, I want to grow very fast, but I don't want to work more than 9 to 5. I don't want to put in the weekends when I need to, all of that. And I'm not a big believer in working on weekends. I actually shut down my computer and do not touch my computer. But there are days when, maybe 2 weekends in a year or 3 weekends in a year when I have no choice but to get onto my computer and work on what I need to. And being comfortable with that, and to say that that's okay. Maybe then in the week that follows, I will take some extra time or leave work early and spend that extra time that I couldn't spend with the family on the weekend. And I think being comfortable with that is extremely important. So that's a separate message that I think I always try to share with a lot of the young talent that I talk to or that I hire. So I think that's very important. From an organization perspective, right? We talk a lot about mental health, and especially post-COVID, mental health is no longer a taboo topic. And so you'll see a lot of organizations talking about mental health. And I think post-COVID, what I noticed was that a lot of organizations thought dealing with mental health meant having wellness days. And I remember even while we were going through COVID and we were living in a hybrid environment with HUL, we used to have online yoga, and we used to have online meditation, and all of this, at some point, I think I realized, useful, but a lot of it was just in name only, but was not truly, impactful, or at least in the long term wasn't impactful in truly helping to drive mental health, right? Or to support mental health. And for me, I think really it's not about wellness days. It's about the everyday psychological safety about coming to work, right? How do you feel when you come into work? Do you feel supported? Do you feel like I was saying right in the beginning, right? That can you speak up? How comfortable are you to speak up? If something makes you uncomfortable, are there enough channels in the organization that allow you to truly speak your mind? I think that is what builds psychological safety. And of course, most importantly, do you have a line manager who actually listens to you, actually notices things about, things that aren't going well with you? And so I think it becomes very important for an organization to actually reframe well-being as much as it is important for every individual to reframe well-being for themselves and work-life balance and work-life integration for themselves. Because burnout is actually a system failure. And it's also about, as an individual, for you as being part of the system, you not doing enough to notice the signs of burnout. I think a lot of this is to do with unclear priorities, or for you to also feel like there's a constant urgency and you feeling like everything needs to be done today. Part of it is, maybe driven by the organization, but sometimes it's also driven by the individual themselves, where they feel like if they don't deliver on something today, the world's going to come to an end. But actually, nothing is going to come to an end. And so moving away from that mindset of constant urgency and really prioritizing what is important at that point in time becomes extremely important to prevent burnout. I think the third thing is lack of boundaries, right? One of the things that I really make an effort to do is that on the weekend, I try not to send any messages to my team. And I think that is extremely important. And I'm hoping that by me not doing it, I won't see my teams do it, right? And the lack of boundaries often result in people feeling like, work owns them. And that's a horrible feeling. And so these boundaries become very important to refresh, recharge, etc. And I think some of it is also about the boundaries that you create for yourself. I think there were times when I very openly said, I'm sorry, I cannot travel at this time, or I'm sorry, I cannot, come to the office at 9 a.m., or that I need to, go and visit, something for school, and I have to go into the school for a PTA. Absolutely fine to set those expectations. And I think the more honest one is with the leader or the line manager, the easier it is to build a very honest and transparent relationship. And I think that creating boundaries is equally the responsibility of the individual as it is that of the organization. And which is why I often say that, employee engagement or even mental health or anything that is related to how you feel at work is a symbiotic relationship. It is equally your responsibility as it is that of the organization. And I think that at the minute we change our mindset on that, it becomes very different in the way that we look at an organization. And I think that has really helped me to have a long career in spite of having, responsibilities from a family and having children as well. So I think that's really important. And then I think, like I talked about, managers, and I'm always coming back to managers because sometimes managers just don't notice the distress. And a lot of this is because managers often don't have the EQ to understand that something that they've said or something that they've done or something that they're expecting is just not doable or not acceptable. And so noticing that distress is important, and managers must be trained in this. But equally, I urge young talent often to speak up and to say that, this isn't working. And actually taking a step and saying, what, this isn't going to work for me, and walking away at the right time is also extremely important because, we're all in here for long, to have long careers. So we can't continue to do what we are doing if we are not able to be at the best of our energy. So the right energy for yourself is extremely important. And the only person who knows your energy best is yourself. And so for me, I always talk about the fact that maintaining and protecting your energy is very much your responsibility, and it will really help to ensure that there isn't a burnout and it allows you to have a long career. I think just to end, I wanted to end with what I believe employee engagement, how important it is to measure what we can on employee engagement, right? So, but the most important thing is that we should measure what we can act on. And I think that is extremely critical. So many companies have, have these pulse surveys and engagement surveys, and there are many surveys that people do, but unfortunately, if there is no action after surveys, then you will never see that change in employee engagement. And so shifting that mindset will require that you measure what you can act on. And I think there are 5 big things that I think are very important for organizations to measure. One is manager effectiveness. The second is role clarity. And I think this all links back to what I've already said. The workload sustainability, trust and fairness, and ownership. And if you look at these 3 as key metrics, or these 5 as key metrics, it becomes very easy to think about what are some of the actions that you need to take to be able to build on your employee engagement and your employee well-being. And I think the most important thing is closing the loop, right? So while you take action, very often employees don't know sometimes what action you've taken. So closing the loop with employees and telling them what that is extremely important. So I think this is, again, another thing that I think very often organizations forget to do. And so it's a big, lacuna in most organizations to have the right communication mechanisms and ensuring that the kind of surveys that you have are not too many or too little. Because if you have too many, you don't have time to act. If you have too little, you have a lot of new employees joining the organization at different times, and you won't hear the voice of everybody. So balancing all that out becomes very important. And of course, like I said, measuring the right things, ensuring that there's action, and closing the loop. I think these are the most important things when we think about employee engagement. But I mean, honestly, while I talked a lot about a different set of many different things, if I had to leave you with just one thing, it is that building employee engagement or a high retention organization, as much as it is the role of the organization, I think it is also the role of an individual to feel comfortable enough to be able to speak up and to really own the organization's engagement themselves, and to create that symbiotic relationship with the organization. So for me, I think if there's anything that you take away from all that I've said, it is that your career is in your own hands. And while I believe that as an organization, it is extremely important for us to do all of the things that I talked about, as an individual, it is equally important to change the mindset and to really think about owning your career and thinking about your career differently, and really looking at finding the kind of places where you will feel most fulfilled, you will be heard, you will get to do meaningful work, and really have people that understand you and help you to achieve your aspirations. So I think that's extremely important. And I think I'm happy to answer any questions on employee engagement or anything else, about my career, work, or just even, my experiences over the last 25 years. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm hoping that you found some of this useful as well. Thanks so much.
Yes, Sejal ma'am, indeed it was very useful, and so rightly said, manager can make or break the deal. I read this line somewhere that people don't leave the companies, they leave their managers. So yes, indeed, that's a very well put. I have a question. I'm really curious to know. So how can an organization prioritize employee well-being without compromising the business objective?
I don't understand how employee well-being can ever be can be against the business objective. I'm not clear about the question.
So my question is that I want to protect my employees, and I want to foster them, basically grow them together. But simultaneously, I want them to work as well and finish off the task. And so from that perspective, I was just thinking. So if you can,
but Deepika, like I said, I think
little...
it's very clear to me, right? So if you create meaningful work and you create work that is meaningful and purposeful and makes them feel like they own the work, then you'll never have to choose between well-being and business objectives. But if you choose or you create roles that are based on activities and not outcomes, then what you will find is that you will always be fighting against the business objective versus the mental well-being. But if you create roles that drive outcomes, then you will never be in that position.
Get that. Yeah. Thank you so much. So we have received a couple of questions in the chat box also. Let me read them out for you. How can organization create a culture where employees feel safe discussing well-being concerns?
Okay, so that's a great question. So I think 2-3 things, right, that you can do to build a culture of psychological safety. I think one is, if you're an organization where performance becomes or trumps everything else, right, and does not take into consideration the fact that, often if you take risks or you choose to do things that are not not necessarily what are in line with what the organization has always done. What happens often because of that is that people feel that I can never take risks and performance is all that matters. And then that really helps to create a very uncomfortable environment, because people will never feel comfortable to do something over and above what they have been asked to do, or they believe is enough to get to the kind of performance that they are expected to achieve, right? So that's, I think, one thing is to create an environment where you can take risks. I think that creates a highly psychologically safe environment. That's number one. Number two, like I said, a lot more informal connects between line managers and teams really help to create a psychological safety, because if you are comfortable with your managers and your team, then that creates an environment of safety. So I think that's the second thing that I think is extremely important. And I think the third thing that is very important is having different channels of communication. So, having opportunities and channels to speak up in different ways. Sometimes people are more comfortable speaking when it is anonymous. So do you have channels that allow you to speak up anonymously? Or there could be ways in which there are channels or forums where specifically they are created to ensure that, let's say, HR business partners, kind of talk to the employees and collate the feedback from the employees. And this becomes a great way for, the organization to create a psychologically safe organization, because these are forums which are set up for sharing and having a conversation. So that really helps.
This was very useful. This is indeed, even I have seen this in my previous companies where we have these employee helplines and everything. So yes, indeed, it's a very helpful. So in JHS also, we did the employee survey that helped us to understand employee concerns. I have got very interesting question: how to manage the expectation of employees? Example, they work for up to 10 years, imagine, hypothetically, when they expect promotion every 2 years, especially a young talent.
No, and I think I touched upon this when I spoke, right? I think we have many generations in the workforce today, and what we find is that the different generations have very different expectations from work, not just from work, but also of growth and what they understand of growth, right? And I spoke about this, that I think it's extremely important for the organization to create a very open and transparent communication channel, so that people feel comfortable enough to share their aspirations. And in the same way, the organization is able to share realistically what are the different career paths that are open to people, right? And I think setting that context very clearly, that career paths don't always have to be vertical career paths. They can be lateral career paths that help you to grow in such a way that you expand your skill set, that allow you to build your leadership skills. So you could build leadership skills without going into a leadership role, right? So, it depends on what roles you can play within the organization, and communicating that and communicating the different career paths becomes very important.
Yes, communication is the key.
Yes.
Okay, and how to turn around a toxic team leader?
How do you turn around a toxic team leader? Honestly,
this is coming back to the manager. Yes, this is coming back to.
So I'll be honest. I don't think there is one right answer for this, and so I don't even want to attempt to answer this. But I can tell you two things, right? One is that toxic team leaders, unless the leadership realizes that these are toxic leaders, nothing is going to change. And so this has to come from the top, and there has to be a culture at the top that really does a 360-degree feedback loop. And if there is a 360-degree feedback loop that is there in an organization, then you can actually get feedback in an anonymous manner about these toxic team leaders. And the senior leaders in the organization realize that, these are the kind of leaders that we don't want in the organization because they're building the wrong culture, and they will take action, right? So that's number one. Number two is, I think sometimes, and I think this is true of, and even in schools, right? When you're young and you're in a school, you have bullies in a school. So handling bullies, the best way to handle bullies is to actually stand up to them. There is no other way to deal with bullies. And so with a toxic team leader, if you speak up and express what you are, what you feel very clearly and actually set boundaries, like I said, will say that this is not acceptable to me. I think after a certain point, you should know when the toxic team leader is not fixable, and then walk away. That's extremely important also for you to know when you should walk away. So I think two things there, like I talked about. One is 360-degree feedbacks, and the second is, dealing with toxic team leaders like you would deal with a bully.
Okay, there's one more question. Work-life balance, work-life integration, isn't it a problem when we treat work and life as a binaries? Is work
Absolutely.
not an integral part of life, but posting life as something independent of work is the source of the problem? If one loves his or her work,
Absolutely. I just
that
read
gets weaker.
I read
Yes.
absolutely agree with this. And that's exactly what I was saying, right? That if you create work, meaningful work, or that you, create roles that are based on outcomes, then there's nothing like work-life integration or work-life balance even needed, right? Because you actually feel like work is an integral part of life. It creates purpose in your life. You're really happy to do it. You're happy to go to work. And so then there is no need to have work-life balance. But I think there are very few people that in the younger generation that actually think like that. So really, if we can get them to start thinking like that, that would really make a big difference.
Yes, I agree to that. Okay, one more thing I want to know is can you give us some tips and tricks how to make employees feel connected, especially for the remote and hybrid work? Because what happens here that manager sits at some different location, employees are sitting at different locations. So that connection, the which we were talking, so if you can give us some tips and tricks there, so we can try to implement that.
Yeah. So sorry, last question, because I have about 5 people outside my
Yes,
cabin
yeah, I'll
right now,
close
so I
after this.
need
This
to
is the
run.
last question. Yes.
But so the last, I think tips and tricks on how do I create an environment. Is that what you asked?
Yeah, for the hybrid, especially hybrid
Hybrid,
work model,
yeah,
where
for a hybrid. So I think
people are.
two things that that worked really well with HUL, and two things that didn't work so well. So I'll talk about both. So what worked well at HUL? One is that we really invested in technology and made sure that even if you are in a hybrid work environment, meaning you're working from home and there, a large part of the team is working from the office, you don't feel disconnected, right? So you feel like everybody is on the video. So it's also about setting some clear, kind of guidelines or guardrails around how hybrid work will happen. So making sure that everybody is expected to put on their video when you're working in a hybrid environment. Secondly, everybody is expected to put their hand up, right? So everybody doesn't speak over each other. We don't allow the team that is sitting in the office to have an informal conversation on the side. I think just setting those kind of rules makes people feel a lot more comfortable. And this is something that we did a really good job of in HUL, because we made it very clear that if you were working from home, you had to put on your video. If you were in the office, you had to put on the video. So I think that plays a very big part. So that's number one. Number two, I think the second thing that worked really well for us is, what we did was that for discussions or roles that required a lot more collaboration, that required a whiteboard and a lot more engagement, we ensured that those people came into the office. And so what we did was we ensured that there was clarity on who could kind of work from home and who had to come into the office, so that it allowed us to make sure that where there was a need for in-person collaboration, you weren't trying to do a hybrid environment. So being very clear about that is actually very, very important.
Very well put up. Okay, with this, I would like to conclude today's session. I think we are bang on time. And today's with the very powerful messages which we got, that while employees may leave for higher salaries, but they may come back if the culture is really good, and the psychological safety that matters a lot. And I would like to thank you, Sejal ma'am, for all the valuable insights you shared today with us, and the team members who work behind the camera. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today and making this session so engaging. So let us keep learning and looking forward for the next session. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening ahead. Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.